Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. So I got my Rolling Stones hat on and my Sticky Fingers t-shirt on, and I'm doing this video because something interesting is going on. The Stones are on tour right now. They've played two big shows, and for the first time in 50 years since the song came out, they are not playing one of their most famous songs. In fact, it's one of the most famous rock and roll songs, and it's a great song in concert, and that is Brown Sugar. Brown Sugar came out in 1971. Here's the original 45. In fact, here's the British 45, which actually had an extra track on the B side. And Brown Sugar was the first song released on Rolling Stones Records, and it was the first song on side one of the album that came out that year, Sticky Fingers, which is my favorite Stones album. Ever since that album in 1971, every tour they have played Brown Sugar. It's always a highlight of the show. They are not playing it. Now, they don't really need to. They got more classics than they know what to do with, and enough war horses, as they call them, that you can get by without playing Brown Sugar. But it's interesting. They haven't talked about it, but there's a lot of chatter on the internet. Did they succumb to woke? Um, and it certainly seems that way. I'm kind of on the fence. I love the song. For me, I always come from a musical background. You can see my drums there. Lyrics always kind of come last. And with the Stones in the 70s, especially the lyrics and the vocals are so buried in a mix, which is my favorite type of mixing for the Stones when Jagger's vocals are way down, that to this day, probably 90% of most people, including big Stones fans, have no idea what Brown Sugar is about because they don't even know the lyrics, just things that you could pick up. I mean, I could tell you I know the lyrics of Brown Sugar, but like Tumbling Dice, another classic, I've heard Tumbling Dice 2,000 times, and to this day, I don't know what the lyrics are. It's just the sound and the groove, and Brown Sugar is just an amazing, amazingly great song. But no doubt, if you analyze the lyrics of Brown Sugar, they could be pretty offensive. So let's look at them. So here's the lyrics of Brown Sugar, which I typed out. Gold Coast slave ship bound for cotton fields, sold in a market down in New Orleans. Scarred old slave and know he's doing all right. Hear him whip the women just around midnight. Well, that first verse is basically documentary. Basically, he's not saying it's right or wrong. He's basically saying that a circumstance happened. Gold Coast slave ship. Well, it's coming from Africa, bound for cotton fields. It arrives in New Orleans, where the slaves on that ship are sold. Scarred old slaver. That's the guy who is buying the slaves. He's all scarred, and he knows what he's doing. He's looking to whip the women just around midnight. So certainly not a pretty picture and pretty gruesome. A brown sugar, how come you taste so good? Brown sugar, just like a young girl should. So that guy is looking to sleep with them, these slaves, and take advantage in every way. Pretty despicable, but he's just describing the situation, I think. Second verse, drums beating, cold English blood runs hot. Lady of house, wondering where it's going to stop. Houseboy knows that he's doing all right. You should have heard him just around midnight. Well, what's that about? I guess English blood runs hot. And the lady of the house, well, I'm assuming the lady of the house is the scarred old slave's wife, who probably knows that he's sleeping and abusing these black slave women. The houseboy, well, I guess that's probably the black slave man who gets to live pretty good in the house. He knows what's going on. He could hear it happening around midnight. Brown sugar, how come you taste so good? Just like a young girl should. Just like a black girl should in the second chorus. And in the final verse, I bet your mama was a 10-show queen. Tell her boyfriends was sweet 16. I'm no schoolboy, but I know what I like. You should have heard me just around midnight. That one gets a little, I'm not exactly sure. 10-show queen would be like a traveling circus. And I guess the mama who worked at the 10-show queen was having sex with all these young boys who either went to the traveling circus or worked in the traveling circus. Not sure what that really has to do with slavery. And then, of course, the chorus where everybody's singing, how come you taste so good? Yeah, yeah. Just like a black girl should. All right. Um, it's pretty offensive as far as describing this horrendous situation. I certainly don't think Mick Jagger's advocating it. He's not saying it was a good thing. He's just describing a situation that probably happened in certain circumstances back at that time, as horrible as it was. Um, so it's about the last 10 years, it comes up every once in a while how offensive those lyrics are. Should the Stones be playing that song? Should they change the lyrics? And now, for the first time, they're not playing it. And the internet, if you go on certain sites, I'm looking at one right there, it's getting brutal. These are Stones fans in there screaming at each other, calling each other racist. Some people think they shouldn't play it, some people think they should. I mean, here's one. What is this guy writing? It's woke culture. Yesterday it's brown sugar. Tomorrow they won't be able to play Under My Thumb, or Satisfaction, or Miss You. If we learned anything from woke, it's like cancer. It grows and it doesn't stop until you cut it out. I'm not saying that. Somebody else is saying that. But in a way, I get, the Stones have always had banned songs and pushed the envelope, whether in 1967 Let's Spend the Night Together, which at that time was, oh my God, the Beatles sang I Want to Hold Your Hand, the Stones are saying Let's Spend the Night Together, and they couldn't play that. They had to change the lyrics on TV to Let's Spend Some Time Together. Even the year before that, in '66, on one Aftermath Alone's got Under My Thumb. Under My Thumb's a girl who once had me down. He's turning the tables on her. In fact, they're playing that live right now on this tour. Stupid Girl's another one from that album. Some Girls, they wanted to ban because of the title track talks about different races of women and what they like. The Stones never afraid to push the envelope. Kind of, it's the way the world should be. I'm a horror movie guy. I like to see graphic horror sometimes, not all the time. The world's kind of boring if you can't talk about certain subjects and everything's G rated. And sometimes things come in waves and it becomes very puritanical in this country, and then all of a sudden you can't do certain things, and then it comes back. But I get it, and I'm not 100. I'm not sure where I stand on this thing. Here's somebody who wrote, "Brown sugar is gross, sexist, and stunningly offensive toward black women. The lyrics tell of underage black girls sold at the New Orleans slave market for the sexual pleasure of their grizzled owner." Well, that's totally true, and it's disgusting. But again, he's documenting what happened at a time. So I could play devil's advocate and say, well, there was a TV series Roots, and I'm sure it had parts of that, and a movie Mandingo, and plenty of movies that document what happened during slavery times. It's not advocating that it was right or wrong. It's just saying this is what happened. And I think that's what Jagger is doing here, clearly, because Jagger wrote the song on his own. Other people say it's a piece of history. If people are offended by it, then they don't need to listen to it. Well, that's definitely true, but if they're playing it live, well, you're there. I mean, I guess you could walk away. I don't know. And then people just get really nasty because in today's world, people just can't seem to communicate. I'm kind of on the fence. I kind of see it both ways, and I'm kind of curious to know what people think. Should brown sugar be banned? Should the Stones never play it anymore? I have kind of a theory that if brown sugar was like this dark, bluesy, slow, maudlin kind of track that was stuck with you, people would probably say, well, that's a really cool song. And he's talking about these terrible things that happened during slavery. But in fact, Brown Sugar is this incredibly upbeat, amazing song. And the song ends, when you see it in concert especially, it ends with him going, so yeah, 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 woo! And everybody's jumping up and down, singing and dancing, and it's a high point of the concert. But then you kind of have this feeling, well, why are people jumping around singing and having a great time about this song, about this terrible stuff that happened during slavery? Well, the answer is because 99% of the audience has no idea what the song's about. And in fact, if they did, it wouldn't matter because nobody there thinks that this was a good thing. It's just a great, great song. So that's the rub. And I'm not 100% sure where I'm at because I love Brown Sugar. I think it's an incredible song. I love seeing it live. But yeah, it's describing what happened then, and it's awful. But again, he's not advocating for it. In fact, Mick Jagger's got a long history in the Stones. There's no racism there. Jagger's had tons of relationship with black women. In fact, he's got a half black child. Him and a black woman had a baby, and the woman who actually sang on that song, she commented on it. Claudia Lanier recently had said something like, "Yeah, I don't think we could play that anymore." And I think Jagger at one point said a while back, "Yeah, I don't know if we could play that anymore either. It's just a different world." So I guess that's what's happening. But I'd love to know your opinion. Again, I see both sides of it, and I'm not exactly sure where I fit on it, but I see both sides kind of equally. So if you're watching this video, thank you. Please hit subscribe and send your comments. Let's try to be civil, folks. Differences of opinion, and we learn from each other. And that's the way I try to look at it. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate it. Have a great night.